Most men are addicted to being heard. They speak before they think. They react before they calculate. They confuse volume with power and noise with presence. And that addiction, that desperate need to be seen, to be validated, to be acknowledged in every room they walk into, is the single greatest weakness a man can carry. It is the chain around his neck that he mistakes for a crown. Machiavelli watched this. He studied it in kings, in generals, in men who rose and men who collapsed. And what he found was not complicated. The loudest man in the room is never the most dangerous. He is simply the most exposed. You want to become quieter, not because silence is passive, but because silence is armor. It is a blade that never shows itself until the moment it is already too late. The man who speaks less reveals less. The man who reveals less controls more. And control, cold, invisible, absolute control, is the only currency that matters in the game Machiavelli laid out centuries ago, and that still governs every boardroom, every relationship, every power structure you will ever enter. You are not here to be liked. You are here to become undeniable. Before we go further, if this is already speaking to something inside you, drop "I am untouchable" in the comments right now. Let the men who are ready make themselves known. Number 2, kill the reaction. Own the response. The moment you react, you lose. Understand that. Burn it into the architecture of how you think, how you move, how you operate in every room, every conversation, every confrontation that life places in front of you. Reaction is emotion wearing the mask of action. It is your weakness speaking before your intelligence has a chance to stand up. Every time someone provokes you and you bite, every time someone disrespects you and you erupt, every time life destabilizes you and you crumble visibly in front of others, you are handing them a weapon and showing them exactly where to aim it. You are telling the world precisely which buttons to press to make you predictable, manipulable, and ultimately controllable. And a controllable man is never a powerful one. Machiavelli did not speak of patience as a virtue in the soft, spiritual sense. He spoke of it as a strategic instrument, the prince who could absorb pressure without flinching, who could be insulted, threatened, or undermined and still respond from a place of cold calculation rather than hot emotion. Was the prince who outlasted every enemy placed before him. Because here is what most men never learn. Your enemies are not destroyed by your anger. They are destroyed by your composure. Your rage entertains them. Your silence unnerves them. Your calm, measured, deliberate response makes them question every move they thought they had already won. That psychological reversal, that moment when the aggressor suddenly feels like the one being hunted, is born entirely from your ability to pause, to breathe, to calculate, and to strike only when the moment is surgically correct. This is not weakness. This is the coldest, most disciplined form of strength a man can develop. Kill the reaction, bury it. Replace it with a response so controlled, so precise, so utterly devoid of emotional desperation that the people around you begin to feel something shift. They stop testing you as carelessly. They start watching you more carefully. And that careful watching, that subtle growing unease in the people who once underestimated you, that is the first sign that you are becoming something they cannot afford to ignore. Number 3, become unreadable. Become ungovernable. There is a war being fought over you every single day, and most men do not even know they are losing it. It is not a war fought with weapons or words. It is fought with information. Specifically, the information you voluntarily surrender about yourself every time you overshare, every time you explain yourself without being asked, every time you feel the need to justify your decisions to people who have no authority over your life. Every detail you give away about your fears, your plans, your insecurities, your desires, every unnecessary confession, every emotional outburst, every moment of visible desperation, becomes a tool in the hands of whoever is paying attention. And in this game, someone is always paying attention. Machiavelli understood that the most fortified prince was not the one with the thickest walls or the largest army. It was the one whose mind no one could map, the one whose next move was never predictable because he never telegraphed it, the one who smiled at enemies and revealed nothing, who listened more than he spoke, who let others believe they understood him while he quietly studied every weakness, every motive, every vulnerability they were too careless to conceal. He was not dishonest, he was strategic. There is a profound difference between lying and simply choosing what to reveal and when to reveal it. One is deception, the other is power. You must cultivate this in yourself with the same discipline a soldier applies to his body. Guard your inner world like it is classified intelligence because it is. Stop performing your emotions for people who are mentally cataloging them. Stop announcing your ambitions to rooms full of people whose silent goal is to see you fail. Stop being an open book in a world full of people who read only to find your weaknesses. Become the man whose stillness makes others uncomfortable, whose quietness makes them nervous, whose unreadable expression forces them to second-guess every assumption they made about who you are and what you are capable of. The ungovernable man is not loud. He is simply impossible to predict, and therefore impossible to stop. Number 4, the dark art of strategic withdrawal. Most men chase. They chase approval. They chase recognition. They chase people who have already shown them through silence and distance exactly how little they matter to them. And in that chasing, in that breathless, undignified pursuit of validation from people who never offered it freely, they destroy the one thing that could have made them magnetic, formidable, and genuinely powerful. They destroy their mystery. The moment you are always available, always responsive, always present at the edge of someone's peripheral vision waiting to be acknowledged, you have already lost. You have communicated something devastating about your value. You have told the world that your time costs nothing, that your attention is unlimited, and that your presence requires no earning. And what costs nothing is valued at exactly that, nothing. Machiavelli wrote that the prince must know when to advance and when to withdraw, and that the withdrawal, executed correctly, was often the more powerful of the two movements. This was not retreat in the cowardly sense. This was the calculated removal of your presence from spaces, people, and situations that were draining your power without returning anything of equal weight. It was the deliberate creation of distance as a psychological instrument, because here is what withdrawal does that nothing else can replicate. It forces recalibration. When you suddenly become less available, less readable, less eager, the people who took your presence for granted are forced to confront the silence you have left behind. And in that silence, your value quietly, invisibly, irrevocably rises. This principle extends far beyond relationships. It applies to every domain where power is negotiated. In business, the man who is always the first to respond, always the most eager to close, always the one leaning forward across the table communicates desperation. And desperation is the single most effective way to collapse your own leverage before the conversation has even begun. The man who can afford to walk away, who has cultivated enough internal abundance, enough alternative options, enough cold detachment from any single outcome, holds every room he enters from a position of quiet dominance that others feel before they can intellectually explain it. They just know instinctively that this man does not need them, and the man who does not need you is always the one you cannot stop thinking about. Practice strategic withdrawal not as punishment, not as manipulation in the petty emotional sense, but as a disciplined reclamation of your own energy, your own focus, and your own irreplaceability. Pull back from what no longer serves your ascent. Go silent where you once over-explained. Disappear from spaces that diminished you and reappear only when you have sharpened yourself into something those spaces were never prepared to handle. The most powerful move on the board is sometimes the one where you simply remove your peace entirely and let the silence do what no argument ever could. If this is rewiring how you think about power, drop "I am untouchable" in the comments. This knowledge is not for everyone, but it was made for you. Number 5. Study everyone. Trust no one. Use all. This is the section that will make the comfortable men uncomfortable. The men who have been raised on the idea that the world is fundamentally good, that people are driven primarily by generosity, that loyalty is the default setting of the human heart. Those men will resist what I am about to tell you. And that resistance, that reflexive moral flinching, is precisely why they will spend their entire lives being outmaneuvered by people who have no such illusions. Machiavelli was not a cynic. He was a realist. And the distinction matters enormously. The cynic believes people are bad. The realist simply understands that people are self-interested, completely, consistently, and without apology. And he builds his entire strategic framework around that understanding rather than the comfortable fantasy that human nature will make an exception in his case. Every person you encounter is operating from a motive, not sometimes. Always. The colleague who praises your work in the meeting is calculating what your goodwill can return to him. The friend who offers unsolicited advice about your ambitions is quietly measuring his own comfort against the threat your success might represent. The person who claims to want nothing from you wants something from you. They simply have not yet identified the moment when collecting will serve them better than waiting. This is not paranoia, this is pattern recognition. And the man who refuses to develop this skill, who insists on taking people at face value, who mistakes performance for character, who confuses consistency in good times for loyalty in bad ones, will be blindsided repeatedly by betrayals that were never actually hidden. They were simply never looked for. Machiavelli's instruction was precise and unsentimental. Study the people around you with the cold, methodical attention of a general studying enemy terrain. Learn what they want, learn what they fear, learn what they value, what they resent, what they are secretly ashamed of, and what they are privately desperate to protect. Not so that you can weaponize this information carelessly, but so that you are never operating blind in a world where everyone else is gathering intelligence on you whether you acknowledge it or not. Knowledge of people is the most durable form of power that exists because it does not depreciate, it compounds. Every conversation becomes a data point. Every reaction tells you something. Every silence communicates volumes to the man who has trained himself to listen beneath the surface of what is being said. And from this deep, patient, unsentimental study of the people in your orbit, you learn how to use them. Not in the cruel, exploitative sense that small minds jump to when they hear that word, but in the Machiavellian sense, which is simply this: every person has a function, every relationship has a utility, and the wise man aligns those functions and utilities with the direction of his own ascent, rather than allowing them to be randomly, wastefully scattered across people and situations that return nothing. You give where giving builds. You invest where investment compounds. You withdraw where the return has dried up. You are not cold because you are empty. You are cold because you are disciplined, because you have decided that your energy, your time, your trust, and your strategic attention are finite resources that will be allocated with the same ruthless precision that Machiavelli applied to the governance of states, because that is exactly what your life is. It is a state, and you are its prince. Govern it accordingly. Number 6, the power of silence as a weapon. There is something that the most dangerous men in history understood that the average man has never been taught and will likely never learn, because the world benefits too much from his ignorance of it. They understood that silence is not the absence of power. It is the purest, most concentrated expression of it. Silence is not what happens when a man has nothing to say. Silence is what happens when a man is so secure in his position, so certain of his calculations, so utterly unbothered by the need for external validation that he chooses, deliberately, consciously, strategically, to say nothing and let that nothing do more work than 1,000 words ever could. The world is drowning in noise. Every man is talking, posting, explaining, defending, announcing, performing. And in that ocean of relentless noise, the man who goes quiet does not disappear. He becomes the most visible thing in the room. Machiavelli observed that the princes who commanded the deepest fear and the most enduring respect were rarely the most vocal. They were the most composed. They spoke when speaking served a purpose and went silent when silence served a greater one. They understood something about the psychology of power that most men never grasp. That when you speak unnecessarily, you are not filling space, you are surrendering it. Every word you produce gives the people around you something to analyze, something to counter, something to use. But when you are silent, you give them nothing. And nothing, in the architecture of psychological warfare, is absolutely devastating. Because the human mind cannot tolerate a vacuum. It will rush to fill the silence you have created with its own assumptions, its own anxieties, its own projections. And 9 times out of 10, what the mind of your opponent invents to fill your silence will be far more intimidating than anything you could have deliberately constructed with words. Learn to sit in silence during negotiations and watch the other person collapse under the weight of their own discomfort. Learn to receive criticism without responding and watch the critic become uncertain whether their attack landed at all. Learn to be insulted without reacting and watch the aggressor lose confidence in real time because your stillness has communicated something their ego was not prepared for. That you are entirely unbothered, entirely unshaken, entirely beyond the reach of whatever they thought they were wielding against you. This is not emotional suppression. This is emotional mastery. The difference is everything. The man who suppresses is still controlled by his emotions. He is simply hiding them, and they will surface eventually in ways he cannot predict or govern. The man who has mastered his emotions has genuinely transcended the need to perform them. His silence is not a mask, it is a mirror, and what people see reflected in it is their own smallness. Extend this principle into every dimension of your life and watch the transformation accelerate. In your professional world, stop over-explaining your decisions to people who are not your superiors and sometimes not even your equals. Your work should speak with a clarity that requires no accompanying monologue. In your personal world, stop confessing every thought, every plan, every doubt to people whose discretion you have never actually tested under pressure. The man who keeps his own counsel, who processes internally rather than performing his thinking externally for an audience, is the man who arrives at conclusions that others never saw coming, with a composure that others cannot rattle, and a precision that others cannot replicate because they never understood his process. In your strategic world, let your silence be the thing that forces others to move first, to reveal first, to commit first, and then, from that position of superior information and cold patience, make your move with the unhurried certainty of a man who already knew how this was going to end before it began. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the sound of a man who has nothing left to prove and everything left to execute. Cultivate it. Weaponize it. Let it become the most recognizable and most unsettling thing about you. The quality that makes people in your presence feel simultaneously drawn in and deeply, instinctively aware that they are standing next to something they do not fully understand and cannot fully control. That feeling they cannot name. That is your power announcing itself without a single word spoken. Drop "I am untouchable" in the comments if silence has just become your new weapon. The men who understand this are already operating on a different level, and they never announce it. Number 7. Strip yourself of need. Become purely dangerous. There is a version of you that is currently being held hostage, not by an enemy, not by circumstance, not by the failures of your past or the limitations of your present. You are being held hostage by your own needs. And until you understand this with absolute clarity and confront it with absolute honesty, you will never access the version of yourself that this title promised you. Need is the root system of every vulnerability you carry. The need for approval feeds the habit of over-explanation. The need for love feeds the pattern of tolerating disrespect. The need for validation feeds the addiction to noise, to performance, to the exhausting theater of proving yourself to people who have already decided what they think of you and will not be changing their minds, regardless of how compelling your evidence becomes. every need you carry is a leash. And the man on a leash, no matter how expensive that leash appears, no matter how voluntarily he accepted it, is not a free man. He is a managed one. Machiavelli's prince was not a man without desire. He was a man who had subordinated every personal desire to the singular, overriding objective of his own power and the preservation of his state. He did not eliminate want. He mastered it. He directed it. He refused to allow any single want to become so consuming, so desperate, so emotionally loaded that its absence could destabilize his judgment or his composure. Because Machiavelli understood something about the architecture of human vulnerability that modern psychology has spent centuries trying to articulate in more palatable language, that the degree to which you need something is the exact degree to which you can be controlled through it. Your hunger is someone else's leverage. Your desperation is someone else's advantage. Your emotional dependency is someone else's weapon, sitting fully loaded in their hands, and they will use it the moment using it serves their interest better than not using it. So the transformation I am describing to you today, this process of becoming quieter, deadlier, more calculated, is not primarily a transformation of behavior. It is a transformation of internal architecture. It begins with the systematic, disciplined, sometimes brutal process of identifying every need that currently governs your decisions and asking yourself with cold honesty whether that need is serving your assent or sabotaging it. The need for constant companionship that keeps you in rooms that diminish you. Examine it. The need for external confirmation before you trust your own judgment. Dismantle it. The need to be understood, to be agreed with, to be publicly vindicated in your choices. Strip it out like a structural flaw before it brings the entire building down. Replace every outward-facing need with an inward-facing standard. Stop asking the world what it thinks of your direction and start demanding of yourself whether your direction meets the standard you have privately set for the man you are becoming. This process will feel like loss before it feels like power. That is not a warning. It is a confirmation that you are doing it correctly. When you stop needing the approval of people who never truly had your interests at heart, there will be a silence where their voices used to be, and that silence will initially feel like emptiness. It is not emptiness. It is space. It is the room that your neediness was occupying that your power now gets to inhabit instead. Fill it deliberately. Fill it with discipline, with study, with the cold and patient cultivation of skills and capabilities that answer to no one's timeline but your own. Fill it with the kind of focused, solitary, unwitnessed work that produces results so undeniable that the world is eventually forced to reckon with them on your terms rather than its own. The man who needs nothing from you is the man you cannot ignore, cannot manipulate, cannot destabilize, and cannot afford to underestimate. He is not cold because life made him that way. He is cold because he chose it, because he looked at what warmth was costing him and decided the price was no longer acceptable. Strip yourself of need, not to become empty, to become purely, finally, completely dangerous. Number 8, move in darkness. Let your results be the revelation. There is a particular kind of man who cannot begin anything without first announcing it. He tells everyone about the business before the business exists. He speaks about the transformation before the transformation has taken root. He broadcasts the plan, the vision, the goal, seeking in that broadcast the premature validation that his discipline has not yet earned him the right to receive. He is addicted to the reaction that announcement produces because the reaction feels momentarily like the achievement itself. The congratulations feel like the accomplishment. The encouragement feels like the result. And so he cycles endlessly through beginnings, always announcing, always starting, always generating enthusiasm for a destination he never actually reaches because the announcement quietly, invisibly, psychologically satisfied enough of the hunger that was supposed to drive him there. He has mistaken the map for the territory. He has consumed the reward before doing the work that justifies it, and he will repeat this cycle with different goals and the same pattern for the rest of his life if no one shows him what he is actually doing to himself. Machiavelli was unambiguous on this point in a way that most modern interpretations conveniently soften or ignore entirely. He understood that the premature disclosure of plans is not merely a tactical error, it is a fundamental misunderstanding of how power actually accumulates and how it is actually lost. When you announce your intentions, you do several devastatingly counterproductive things simultaneously. You give your competition the gift of preparation time they did not earn. You invite the opinions, the doubts, the unsolicited risk assessments of people whose vision does not extend to where you are going and whose comfort is quietly threatened by the possibility that you might actually get there. You create an audience for your journey, and audiences, by their very nature, change the journey. You begin performing your ambition instead of executing it. You start making decisions based on how they will be perceived rather than whether they will be effective. The gaze of others corrupts the purity of your process, and the corruption is so gradual, so subtle, so wrapped in the language of support and community that most men never identify it as the poison it is. The Machiavellian alternative is as simple as it is demanding. Move in darkness and let your results be the revelation. Do the work in silence. Build in private. Struggle without an audience. Fail without witnesses. Learn without commentary. And refine without the distorting pressure of external expectation. Let the people around you operate on outdated assumptions about who you are and what you are capable of, because those assumptions, that comfortable underestimation, is one of the most powerful strategic advantages you will ever possess. The man who is underestimated moves freely. He is not watched carefully. He is not preemptively countered. He is not the subject of anyone's defensive maneuvering because no one has yet calculated him as a serious threat. And then he arrives, not with an announcement, not with a press release, not with a carefully curated series of updates designed to manage perception. He arrives with results so undeniable, so fully formed, so completely realized that the people who underestimated him are not given the luxury of gradual adjustment. They are confronted all at once with the full weight of what he has become while they were busy doubting him. This is the cold poetry of strategic silence applied to ambition. This is what it looks like when a man operates entirely from internal validation, entirely from his own compass, entirely from the disciplined certainty that the work he is doing in the darkness will eventually produce a light so bright that no amount of prior skepticism will be able to diminish it. Stop feeding your goals to an audience that cannot digest them. Stop seeking permission from people who cannot see your destination. Go quiet. Go deep. Go to work in the private, unwitnessed, unglamorous darkness where every truly great thing is first constructed, and emerge only when what you are carrying is too powerful, too complete, too undeniable to be questioned by anyone who was not there to witness the building of it. Your results are your announcement. Your arrival is your argument. Everything else is noise. And you have already decided that noise is beneath you. Number 9. The calculated mind. Think in moves, not moments. The single greatest separator between the man who accumulates power and the man who perpetually watches it slip through his fingers is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even discipline in the conventional sense that motivational content endlessly recycles without ever penetrating deep enough to be genuinely useful. The separator is time horizon. The ordinary man thinks in moments, in the immediate emotional weather of the present situation, in the short-term relief of the comfortable decision, in the reactive urgency of what feels most pressing right now, regardless of whether right now is the correct theater in which to be spending his energy and attention. He is perpetually governed by the tyranny of the immediate. And because he is always responding to what is directly in front of him, he never develops the capacity to see what is 3 moves ahead, which is precisely where every consequential outcome is actually being determined, quietly, invisibly, long before the ordinary man realizes a game was even being played. Machiavelli's concept of virtù that rare combination of intelligence, adaptability, and calculated aggression that distinguished the truly formidable prince from the merely competent administrator, was fundamentally a quality of thinking rather than a quality of action. The action was simply the visible output of an internal process that was already operating on a different temporal plane than everyone else in the room. The Machiavellian mind does not ask what is happening right now and how do I respond to it. It asks what outcome do I require, what sequence of conditions must exist for that outcome to become inevitable, and what must I do today, quietly, patiently, without external validation or visible progress, to begin constructing that sequence. It thinks in architecture rather than reactions. It builds structures rather than fighting fires. It is always playing a longer game than the people it is playing against. And that asymmetry of time horizon is the most durable competitive advantage a human mind can possess. This requires you to develop something that modern culture has systematically, almost deliberately, destroyed in the men it produces. The capacity for delayed gratification so deep, so absolute, so completely internalized that it no longer even feels like sacrifice. It feels like strategy. When the calculated man declines the immediate pleasure that would compromise his long-term position, he does not experience that declination as deprivation. He experiences it as a move, a precise, considered, purposeful move in a sequence that the people around him cannot read because they are too busy reacting to the present moment to notice that he is quietly, methodically constructing the future one. Every decision he makes is filtered through a single, ruthlessly applied question. Does this serve where I am going, or does it merely serve where I am? And anything that only serves where he is, no matter how comfortable, how flattering, how immediately satisfying it appears, is declined with the cold efficiency of a man who has simply stopped being available for experiences that do not compound toward his objective. Begin training this capacity in yourself immediately, and begin training it in the smallest decisions, because that is where the architecture of a calculating mind is actually built. Not in the dramatic, high-stakes moments that announce themselves as important, but in the daily, mundane, unglamorous choices that feel inconsequential precisely because their consequences are deferred. The conversation you choose not to have because it would reveal your position prematurely. The opportunity you decline because it is good but not aligned. The relationship you quietly distance yourself from because its trajectory and yours have fundamentally diverged, even if no single moment has yet made that divergence undeniable. These small, invisible, disciplined choices are the molecules of which a Machiavellian mind is constructed. Make enough of them, consistently enough, over a long enough period of time, and you will look up one day to find that you have built something that the reactive, moment-to-moment, emotionally governed men around you genuinely cannot explain and secretly cannot stop studying. You will have become the man who always seems to know something others do not, who always seems to arrive at the right place at the right time with the right preparation, who seems, to the untrained eye, to simply be lucky, when in reality you stopped believing in luck the moment you started thinking in moves. Number 10. You were never meant to be ordinary. This is where it ends, and this is where you begin. Everything laid out across these sections, the silence, the withdrawal, the calculated mind, the stripped neediness, the darkness you move through, the unreadability you cultivate, none of it is technique. It is identity. It is the architecture of a man who decided at some precise and private moment that ordinary was no longer a place he was willing to live. Machiavelli did not write for the masses. He wrote for the few, the rare, cold, self-possessed men who understood that power is not given. It is constructed brick by brick, in silence, in discipline, in the unseen hours when everyone else has settled for comfort. You found this video. You stayed until the end. That is not coincidence. That is selection. The weak left early. You are still here. So let this be your moment. The moment the quieter, deadlier, more calculated version of you stops being a possibility and becomes an inevitability. Drop "I am untouchable" in the comments. Say it like you mean it, because from this moment forward, you do. If this video rewired something in you, hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications. Because what comes next is even darker, even sharper, and built entirely for men like you.